It was the big battle of Caen yesterday as two riders broke away from the peloton and led the race for most of the day. Inevitably, they were caught with just 2 kilometres to go in the finale. Spanish sprinter Oscar Freire timed it right to surprise overall leader Tom Boonen and the green jersey holder Robbie McEwen. He took his second career Tour stage win. Today we head through the open roads of Western France, and with the all-important individual time trial looming, the top contenders will try and save their energy. This will make stage 6 the perfect opportunity for a breakaway to separate themselves from the peloton and perhaps take a win. Can they succeed, or will one of the sprinting superstars rack up another stage? The Tour de France will reveal all next on OLN. Today marks the end of the opening week of the Tour de France. We're across the north of France. We can't get much further west, or you'll fall into the Atlantic. We're heading to Brittany today. Well, these bicycles were around more than 100 years ago. They're around today as well. The old ordinary or the penny farthing. This is the view of the finishing line. This is the view I suspect the sprinters will see in just a couple of hours' time. Hi everybody, welcome back to our live coverage here on OLN of the Tour de France. I'm Phil Liggett, this of course is Paul Sherwen, and so far this week it has been a great battle of the sprinters, and Tom Boonen has made the most of it.
Well, he has made the most of it. A lot of people are saying, well, where are the overall contenders, the men we expect to win the Tour de France? Well, a Tour de France like this doesn't come round very often with so many flat stages before the mountains, no team time trial, so the sprinters will battle it out every day to try and keep the yellow jersey, because they know, Phil, once we get to the mountains, they've got no chance.
All right, well, Tom Boonen, of course, is a sprinter. He hasn't won a stage yet, which he's pretty upset about. He's won 17 races this year before he came to this tour. Look at this, beaten again yesterday by Oscar Freire. But because he's being the most consistent finisher, he's stealing the time bonuses, and as a result, Paul, he is in yellow.
Well, he's going to look for time bonuses again out on the open road. 3 intermediate timed sprints for Tom Boonen, Villedieu-les-Bailleul, then into Saint-Chantrigne, then into Jouvigne. At those points, he can get 6, 4 and 2 seconds time bonus. Then at the finish line, there's 20 seconds, 12 and 8 for the first 3 riders to cross the line. Those are going to be very important for the sprinters.
Well, you know, apart from the prologue time trial in Strasbourg, this has been a mass start cycle race, really over largely flat roads, and that's why the sprinters are tasting their best ever start for years to the Tour de France. They are making the most of it, and we expect it to happen again today.
Well, absolutely. It's a very flat course, and it's a course which, again, I think we'll see dominated by an early breakaway. But if we look over the last few years, back in 1992, there were 8 flat stages, but there weren't so many sprinters as there are now. We only had 2 bunch sprints towards the end. Last year, 2005, there were 9 flat stages, which ended up in 6 bunch sprints. This year, with all the best sprinters in the world, apart from Alessandro Petacchi riding, there have been 5 flat stages and 4 bunch sprints. And you know what? There are still 7 flat stages to go. And with so many sprinters around, they want to keep enjoying their days.
Well, the man who's making the most of these consistent daily finishes, and for that he gets the green jersey every day, is the Australian Robbie McEwen. This is a very tight competition. Boonen is chasing him all of the way, as is Oscar Freire and Thor Hushovd. Let's have a look at the standings. Look at that. A single point advantage as we go out today with McEwen over Boonen. Oscar Freire is right in the mix too. Daniele Bernati crashed yesterday, so lost a few points. He's 4th, and Thor Hushovd is in 5th. OK, how do we score today?
Well, again, similar points to the bonus sprint points at 3 points out on the course at 143 to go, 73 kilometres to go and 27 kilometres to go. The riders between 1st and 3rd get 6, 4 and 2 points. But again, for the sprinters on the flat stages, it's all stacked up on the finish line. 35 points for a win, 22 points for 5th place. And then between 6th and 25th, it's 20, down to a single point on its own.
Thanks, Paul. Well, as usual, let's go back to the start this morning and see what's happened. 171 riders left town this morning in Lisieux. The non-starter was Fabio Sacchi of the Milran team. I suspect he's sick. Tom Bonan dressed in matching shorts there for his maillot jaune. A little bit of drizzle in the air, but basically the forecast, the low cloudy, is expected to stay dry as the riders headed out here for the start. A little bit of rain on the camera lens. There's the 0 kilometre, so that starts the count of 189 kilometres. By the first climb, the Côte de la Hunière, after 27 kilometres, the attacks were on. Giuseppe Guerini, remember him? He won at Alpe d'Huez once, just getting ahead of Lopez Garcia. Pinot, though, got points for third place on that climb. At the first sprint at Villedieu, a breakaway of 18 riders went. Tom Bonan was in it, but it was Vaux Renard who got the sprint. 6 points and a 6-second time bonus. He will be back in the white jersey by the end of the day. There's a look at the attack of the 17-18 riders down there. Tom Bonan enjoying the move. Also in it was Thor Hushoff. But of course, from that group, 3 men went away. The bunch were hunting down that breakaway once they got Bonan back. Florent Braud, Magnus Backstedt and Anthony Jeslan are still clear in the race now. And there's Tom Bonan. He was part of it, but of course that yellow jersey is a magnet to the peloton of the Tour de France, and they were after him very, very quickly. There you can see the catch. This happened only moments ago as the peloton got Tom Bonan. Bonan's team also on the front, setting the pace with Lamprey. So that's the situation. 3 riders are clear. They built themselves a little lead because once the pack got Bonan back, Paul, they weren't too interested in the 3 breakaways.
No, not really interested in those 3 breakaways at all. Anthony Jeslan of France is the highest placed in the overall standing, 74th, 1 minute and 15 seconds behind. But it was interesting to see that it was Team CSC who missed out completely on that 18-man breakaway, and they were the ones who had to chase to pull back the group with Tom Bonan in it. Now, Team Quickstep have got to the front of the main field, and as they did yesterday, they're setting the tempo on the front, trying to make sure that that leading group of 3 doesn't get too big an advantage.
So there we are, overcast, 72 degrees Fahrenheit. The winds are 9 miles an hour, but it will be on the noses for the last 20 miles today. Long straight line nonetheless. The riders are going to feel the wind really for a lot of the day, but it's not very strong at the moment, although at the finishing line it's blowing quite strong, and it should be a nasty approach into the town of Vitré. We went and had a look at the finish line yesterday through the town. It's quite a hazardous approach in the last 3 kilometres.
Very tricky once you get into the town of Vitré. Not so bad once you leave town because it's a very long 2-kilometre straight. You know, the important thing about riding in the peloton is when you see the race with a headwind or a tailwind, you'll notice there's a very long line of riders. But once we get into the dangerous crosswinds, then the riders will form a diagonal line across the road, and that diagonal line in professional cycling is called an échelon, or in French it's called a bordure, and that makes it very dangerous, especially on the leeward side of the wind. Riders going through the feed zone now, important on a stage like this. Bagnoles de l'Orne, 92.5 kilometres. There used to be a very famous French amateur classic came into this town called Paris Bagnoles de l'Orne. The L'Orne very much in the heart of Normandy. In fact, this morning we went through the small town of Vimoutiers, which happens to be the small town where Camembert was invented.
The cheese after Pont-l'Evêque yesterday, we're off towards Camembert today. Well, as I said earlier, 176 riders started the tour a week ago now. At the end of today, 172 remain. Lost 1 more today, Fabio Sacchi. He didn't start from Milram, leaving 13 of the 20 teams of 9 riders at the start intact in the race. So this has been an opening week for the sprinters, of course. They've enjoyed it largely because they've been able to shadow box with each other, and because they're great favourites to win this race. There are probably 6 or 7 of them are waiting for tomorrow's time trial. Then we'll have a pecking order as we race down towards the Pyrenees. And this is big Magnus Backstedt at the back with the new champion of France, Florent Braud, and the aggressive Anthony Jeslan today in the blue because he's attacked all day. He's been rewarded now. He's in a leading group, some 3.5 minutes ahead of the field. Well, as we take our first break, let me remind you the battle today should be for the sprinters. It should be to see who wears the green jersey tonight on the eve of the first long time trial. We're back on the road to the Tour de France. Stay with us, everyone. Enjoy the action today. Welcome back to the Tour de France. Overcast today, a little bit of rain at the start, all gone away now. The racing in nice, pleasant conditions for cycle racing at least, if not so much spectating. 4 minutes, 11 seconds, that just taken at the feed. Bienvenue à Couterne, that's where we're racing to now, this lovely little village here. And the riders now having built that nice little gap. Still 92 kilometres to go. The yellow jersey being worn today, as it has been for the last 3 days, by Tom Bonan. And the green jersey, Robbie McEwen's got that by a very fragile 1 point. So that battle will resume today for the points competition. There's the main field with Bonan's teammates setting the pace now as we chase just 3 riders today. Just to remind you of those 3 riders' names: Magnus Bagstedt of the Leaky Gas team, the Swedish rider who comes from South Wales these days, and Florent Brod, the new champion of France, and Anthony Geslan, Bouygues Telecom. 2 Frenchmen and a Swedish rider on the attack. Chateau de Tessé-la-Madeleine, one of the beautiful chateaux that abound here as we race now into Brittany.
Really is starting to become the magnificent part of France. Brittany is the heart of French cycling. At the moment, we're still on the outskirts of Brittany, very much on the edge of Normandy. But really, in this part of the world, the chateaux certainly do abound. But for the riders, what they're thinking about now is who is going to chase the 3 leaders, because Tom Bonan's team, the Quick Step team, they will leave it, I think, as a status quo, because for them, they don't want to do all of the work on every single stage of the race. They need some help to come from Robbie McEwen, who's still looking for a victory. And this year, there are an awful lot of flat stages in the Tour de France. And I think the reason we've seen so many bunch sprints is because this has got to be the Tour de France recently that has had the largest number of sprinters present. The only man really who is missing with the fast finish is Alessandro Patacchi, who's out of the Tour injured.
That's absolutely right. One sprinter yesterday missed one of the prime chances was Isaac Galvez from Spain, because he rode at the back consistently. We pointed it out to you. What we said could happen happened. He finished up the day almost last, losing 5 minutes, when on a day like yesterday he should have stayed at the front and he might well have won the stage.
But sadly, Daniele Bernati was riding at the front, the man who's been pretty consistent since the start. He's worn the green jersey on one of the days, Phil. He also crashed, but that was at 4.5 kilometres to go, so you've just got to be careful.
And lucky, I guess. There's a nice view of the peloton today as the riders continue on. And Quick Step back in the office now, just keeping the pace nice and steady. No big concern yet with 56 miles to go. They won't allow this break to get a lot more than 4 minutes, I wouldn't think. Otherwise, it might be a challenge to draw it back in time. And talking with Rolf Sorensen of Denmark, who's a great rider, he says a nasty headwind for the last 30 kilometres. All right, well, let me remind you that tonight, as every night, we have enhanced coverage of the Tour de France. Tonight it's stage 6. Bob Roll will bring you his guide to the Tour. Plus, we'll sit down with Floyd Landis' coach, Robbie Ventura. The primetime show will begin at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 9 p.m. Pacific. Daily coverage of the 2006 Tour de France is only on OLN. But you know that, let's face it. Back to the action here as we see taking a drink now, Robbie McEwen. 1 point in it for that race, for that green jersey. He knows it's fragile. He's won it twice before. He was very close to winning it last year, but he had a disqualification on one of the stages, and that cost him dearly. These are the 3 riders. Magnus Bagstedt in the middle, Florent Bras on the front at the moment, Anthony Geslan. 3 strong men. Bonan tried a tricky move today. He almost got away with it, but they brought him back. They know his value to this race, and they want him out of yellow as fast as they can get him. We'll take a break. Welcome back, and that was the super finish yesterday by Oscar Freire, the former Spanish world champion, and boy, that was a great sprint. Well judged. The others made a complete mess of it in the wind, but not Oscar. That gave him his 5th win of the year, his 52nd win as a professional rider since he turned pro in 1998. Well, as we tour the chateaux of Normandy and Brittany today, with 87 kilometres to go, about 55 miles, the race is being dominated just for the moment by 3 men. And 3 riders continue to keep the pace up. The time gap, I think, will continue to rise for just a few minutes more before they start to try and reverse it.
Well, they'll keep a very close eye on it as we look down here on the Chantepie Castle, a 19th century castle. What the leading group of 3 will look for is to try and build themselves an advantage of around about 10 minutes, and then they know they're in with a chance. It's the game of poker of professional cycling on days like this. When you go away in a move, people often say to me, why are they doing this? Why are they going on the attack when they know they're going to get caught? Well, basically, they don't know they're going to get caught. They're hoping that the teams of the sprinters make a mistake, get it wrong, miscalculate, as they nearly did on the stage into Saint-Quentin, where they only caught the 3 survivors of the breakaway, Phil, inside of the last 1.5 kilometers.
That's absolutely right. And, well, Paul, I think we've seen Erik Zabel for most of his racing career. And today he's celebrating his 36th birthday in the heart of the Tour de France. And I believe his young son Rick has just won his first cycle race at the age of 12.
Yes, he won a race yesterday in Cologne, Germany, and I think Rick was obviously trying to emulate Dad, and maybe that was an early birthday present. The great thing I like about Erik Zabel is he still loves the grassroots of the sport. He enjoys going down to the races with his son. As we look at the back end of the pack here, number 11, Bobby Julich. 17th overall in the Tour de France last year, but his best performance ever was back in 1998 when he finished 3rd overall. See if he's got something to say.
Just the rasping of the breath. I don't think we've got a microphone around him down there, but just to come back to the Zabel tale and young son Rick at 12 years of age winning his first race. Well, that 12 seems to be the age in the Zabel family, because this is Erik's 12th Tour de France, and he's won 12 stages, which is a German record. The trouble is, unfortunately, Paul, we remember Erik bringing his 1-year-old son onto the winner's podium for the green jersey.
It's scary. A long time has passed, and we've enjoyed the career of Erik Zabel. I hope he runs out a winner in this year's Tour, because he actually signed up with this new Team Milram to lead out the sprints for Alessandro Petacchi, and he seemed very happy to be able to do that. Unfortunately, with the accident that Petacchi had in the Giro d'Italia when he smashed his kneecap, it's promoted Erik Zabel now to a team leader, and although he's been very consistent, he doesn't really have the top-end speed necessary to win. And there's a man it's nice to see at the front of the pack there in the dark CSC jersey. That's Stuart O'Grady. A crack in the 4th lumbar vertebrae. A lot of people don't understand how this man can carry on in a bike race like this, but Eric, I have to say about Stuart O'Grady, he's a tough man.
He is. Nice to see him coming to the front. He'll give himself a bit of confidence as well by doing that. Welcome to the Tour de France. From the people of the region here. This is a great region. It was where Lance Armstrong actually made his reputation as an amateur rider when he won the King of the Mountains in the Tour de l'Avenir in this region before he signed up for Motorola. There are no hills in this area, so that was quite an achievement, I think.
Well, he went out on the attack on a number of occasions. He was always, from the very first professional race that Lance Armstrong took part in, an aggressive athlete. Although he didn't enjoy his first actual professional appearance, because that was the Grand Prix Saint-Sebastian, which was one of the big World Cup races, and he finished plumb last in that. Yeah. He really hated the fact that he finished last, and he actually that week almost abandoned the sport at the top end of the level, because he said, I don't really want to do this. But fortunately, he went on to ride the Tour of Galicia, where he won himself a stage, and thought, well, that's not bad. Only been riding as a professional for 3 or 4 days, and I've got a victory. A couple of years later on, he went back to the San Sebastian Classic, and he ran out the overall winner.
Well, 4:45, the latest gap there. I'm just looking here at the back of Magnus Backstedt. Well, let's remind you of our word of the day again. Don't forget, log on to olntv.com. A fly to the finish. You can win Saabs and great prizes. Here's a look at the watchword today. It is Phonak, and that of course is the team of Floyd Landis. We'll be speaking a lot about that in the days ahead, I'm sure. So Phonak is your watchword. And these are the boys at the front now from CSC. Jens Voigt has moved up alongside. He's sent to Jens, talking with Stuart O'Grady. O'Grady having a good day because he's had a rough season so far. If you've been watching our daily coverage, you'll remember the comment we had of him 2 days ago saying, yeah, I guess this isn't my year. Well, let's hope he can make something out of it. There's still a long way to go in this year's Tour de France. The lead continues in the ascendancy here, 5 minutes 14. We expected it to go up now with the big stars back in the peloton, but you never know whether they mistime the catch. Robbie McEwen, these are the relaxing moments of the Tour for him. That'll all change as we head towards the finish in the next hour and 3/4. We're back live on OLN. Now, these people aren't taking part in the Tour de France, but they're just reminding us about the joy of the cavalcade as the riders come by. There's a super view of the Tour from a spectator's viewpoint, and the spectators travel from all points in the world. And next year, of course, the Tour de France will start in the city of London in England for the first time in its history. And as the riders here, they hand in their racing capes, they're slimming down for the race because the pace is going to hot up. 5 minutes 9 seconds is the gap. The man just doing his job there was Patrice Olgon. He's a very good time trial. He started off the season with a broken collarbone just before the start of the Jacobs Creek Tour down under in Australia. He crashed warming up for the event down there. Well, the three leaders are the same riders, Bagstead, Brad and Geslam, but it's time now to get down to our Lance On the features, which we've all been enjoying. And this time we're going to talk about Lance On Team Discovery.
Our strength will be our depth. If there's 20 guys over the top of a hard climb, I think we have 5 there, at least. And so, you know, when you put yourself in that position, then it's all a numbers game. If you're trying to win stages, or if you're just trying to put somebody in the top 5 or top 3, I think we do it. And again, the guy in the car talking on the radio is so important. I mean, Johan, he doesn't want to drive car 15 in the Tour de France. He's done 7 years of driving car number 1, right behind the head official. The dude doesn't want to sit back 10, 12, 20 cars back. I have no idea who's going to lead Discovery. The sentimental and emotional leader will be George. We all saw what he did last year, winning quite a day and toughest stage of the Tour. Tons of experience. Should have won Paris-Roubaix. Finally. That will be who I'm rooting for. But you have to consider, we have Popol, we have Acevedo, you got Chechu, you got a lot of good guys. But we'll come with a great team. I mean, it'll be a team that rides with Johan Brunel's mentality, which means it'll be a good team.
You bet. Today's Lance On brought to you by the Nike 10-2 collection, inspired by the man himself, of course. Learn more about Lance and 10-2 at weareyellow.com. These are where the Americans are currently situated. Tomorrow, they could be all up near the leaderboard. It's the big time trial, and it's the first chance to shuffle the pack. Hincapie at the moment has 4th place, a perfect position to be the next leader of the Tour. Savadelli is there in 7th, but the whole team is riding superbly. It was bad luck for Igor Martinez, slipped to 88th yesterday from 5th because he crashed approaching the finish, and he lost the best part of 2 minutes. These are the men shaping the race today. For how long? Your guess is as good as mine. 4:54, first reversal, so the riders are beginning to chase early on today. Exactly 50 miles to race to the finish as we continue to look here at the back of the race. Well, just making his progress up the field here as my man to win today, Paul, Oscar Freire.
Well, once you get
just
the
a
taste of winning,
hiccup, I hope.
No, I think once you get the taste of winning, you've definitely got it there. This man has to be regarded as one of the enigmatic men of the sport. If he's not injured, this man can win a race any which way you want, in a breakaway, over the top of a hilly stage race, or of course in the bunch sprint as he did yesterday. And he's got the attributes, because after all he's been 3 times champion of the world.
That's right, and the first time, of course, nobody ever heard of him, so we thought, well, that's right, he won't do that again, but of course he did it twice more.
Well, the first time he won the title, he'd had a terrible season. He'd been injured, and I think from memory he'd only had 14 days of racing, and the World Championships is at the end of the season. He'd been injured for the majority of the year, and he came out of the pack, and everyone said, who is Oscar Freire? Well, we know now, don't we?
We do. That was way back in 1999. He'd only just turned professional, really. And it wasn't a lucky win. Very often you get a rider might be lucky, but he wasn't lucky, as he's shown us ever since. Yesterday he read that finish better than anyone and took his chance well. There's life in the heart of the peloton here.
And I have to say, yesterday Tom Boonen was very well accepted his defeat, because he said, look, Oscar Freire is a great sprinter. He got the jump on me immediately, and all I could do was just try and hang on for 2nd place, because I just could not pull back any distance between myself and the Spaniard.
All right, so that's Oscar Freire then. 3 wins in 99. He's had a lot more since then. Looking here at the quick release mechanism on the front wheel of Magnus Bagstedt. It's the lever that you just pull off. The wheel drops out, slots a new one in. Should take about 9 seconds if he has a flat tyre. And that will mean not too much energy required to rejoin the race. But you can see by the diagonal line now, the wind coming from the centre of our television screen. The rest trying to scurry into the shadow of the other riders. We are saying goodbye to Normandy and welcome back. You see how much value the sun has been to the crops in the region this last week. It's gone from us today, but the crops are ready for bringing in by the look of it as we pass the history of Brittany and heading on to Vitré now. It's only the 4th time the Tour de France has ever been there. Just for the record, the first winner was Rudy Matisse in 1985, then followed Mario Cipollini in 95 and Marcel Wust the last time he came here in the year 2000. And you were with us then on OLN as you are today. And today we've got 3 riders, 2 Frenchmen and a Swedish rider. Magnus Bagstedt, Anthony Geslin and Florent Brard trying to slip the pack. But the pack are not letting them go too far today because the lead is down now. 4 minutes and 40 seconds at 47 miles to go. And coming down quite rapidly, I think. So we could be in for a very exciting finish today. 2 reasons for this. One is tomorrow is not a day for the sprinters, so the sprinters know that tomorrow, all the publicity we've been giving them, there won't be any for them tomorrow because it's the first long individual time trial. And it's going to mean that the big names who want to win this Tour de France have got to come out and ride to the limit of their ability. And that's going to be a big day tomorrow for us as we race the time trial around Rennes. All right, well, here's something, and you remember you heard it first on OLN. This September, major changes are here at OLN. We change our name to Versus, bringing you exclusive events you can't see anywhere else, like the Tour de France and the America's Cup, plus in-depth coverage of the Davis Cup, boxing, the PBR, and it's the only place to find weekly national coverage of the NHL. The network for the athletes, for the sportsmen, and for you, the fans, and anyone who's up for a challenge. This September, OLN becomes Versus. The Tour de France bound for its finish today, and then tomorrow, as I say, the individual time trial. A lot of work being done at the front of the peloton now. The green jersey being held by Robin McEwen by just a single point ahead of Tom Bonan. There's 35 points for the winner today, so second place won't be good enough to keep it, will it? Just looking there at Bonan, Paul, he never rides far from the bunch, from the front of the bunch as usual. Only one of his teammates behind him. All the rest are in front looking after him, but the one behind, he's there for a reason, isn't he?
He's there for a reason. You always put a rider behind a leader in the team, just in case for some reason there's a little bit too much noise, and the man sitting behind the leader will see if the leader has a mechanical incident. And of course, if it looks like a moment when the race is quite grippy, what the man sitting behind will do is pass a wheel across, because you can change a wheel in 10 or 15 seconds between 2 riders. But if the main field is stretched out and you don't have time to get the team car behind you, you can actually have to wait for 30 or 40 seconds, and it could be important to get a quick wheel change.
Yes, you see, you think they're just riding along in a complete pack in a higgledy-piggledy fashion. Well, it's not the case. These riders are thinking all of the time. And right now they're thinking of bringing back these 3 riders, coming down rapidly at 4:30 now. So the chase is very much on here at 73 kilometers to go. We're just in the town of Chantrine, where we should see the next sprint of the day. So as we see the sprint sign up, we've got time to come along with the Saab afterburner report. Yesterday, this man was in overdrive. Oscar Freire getting the best there of Tom Bonan. Robin McEwen making a mistake. He came out of nowhere to get the lead, and in the end won by virtually a bike length. Watch out for that guy in blue too, David Kopp. He might be winning a stage soon. There you are. That's a look back at yesterday, and that was today's Saab afterburner report. And if you've never heard of Oscar Freire, shame on you. You should have done, because this boy in 1998 became a world champion. He won it twice more since then, and he's ridden well in the Tour de France. He's had a stage win in Saarbrück, I think it was, before he came to win yesterday in Caen. And he's 30 years of age, and he's enjoying his Tour de France now. Well, they've just passed through the sprint. I'm sorry about that, but it wasn't a sprint, as you can imagine. It doesn't affect these 3 riders, and we'll give you the results as soon as the race gives it up to us on our computer. But there's no interest in the sprint here. They're more interested in holding it together, keeping the pace steady, working as a group, even though they're on rival teams. The old story, they're holding off the common enemy at the moment, which is the peloton. And they're not holding it off very well because it's beginning to run at them now. 4:24 is the last time check. There they are, coursing through the town, heading towards Chantrine, which is where they are. They're actually running today just on schedule, which is giving them a very high speed of nearly 46 kilometers an hour. So they're riding very quickly, really, making the most of the cross-tail winds, which will turn into a headwind as we descend down to the finish, because we come through Fougères and we change direction towards Vitré. So far, a lovely safe day for everybody in the Tour de France. Routine? Well, it's never routine, is it? But as we say, let's go to break. Take a look at some of the troubles they've been in over the past few days. Welcome back to the Tour de France. The peloton just passing under the banner there of the sprint that we didn't quite catch up with, but it wasn't a sprint. They rode through in this order. Anthony Geslin, Florent Braud, Magnus Bagstedt, as that was the order the leaders went under the banner. The gap is 4 minutes now and 13 seconds. When the leaders got to that banner, it was 4:20, so they are continuing to run down these leaders at quite a fast pace today. At 69 kilometers to go, this race could come together a lot earlier, which means we might be treated to a series of attacks before we finally get down to the finish in Vitré. Very tricky approach to the finish today. We had dinner on the square last night in Vitré, and I couldn't believe the race is going to race right past the restaurant, because there were very small round circled islands, a lot of obstructions. They had a lot of straw bales out, so we hope to have a safe journey across the city now, or the town rather, later. So let's have a look now at AT&T yellow jersey moment. This was a big moment for Tom Bonen. He almost thought he'd won the stage as well wearing yellow, but in the end he had to do his second place. But because of the bonus, he increased his overall lead over Michael Rogers, the Australian who rides for T-Mobile. That's our AT&T yellow jersey moment. Magnus Bagstedt, Big Maggie as everybody calls him, this super nice guy from Sweden, and his English is as good as anybody from Great Britain, I can tell you, in the breakaway today. Geslin, Braud, Bagstedt, that's the order of the finishing sprint at 68 kilometers to go.
Well, it was not far away from this area that Maggie Bagstedt got himself a win, and it was from a situation like this where we thought the breakaway wasn't going to survive, and when it came down to the finish line, Big Maggie got the win in the sprint, and the yelp that he let out of joy there nearly knocked me off the commentary position, because he's a big boy, you know.
And there are many complaints about how the women scream and have their comments to make on the tennis field in Wimbledon. Well, I think Maggie would have beaten all of them when he won that stage a few years back, because it was a great result for him, and I think it was a break of 6 riders at the time.
It was. I must admit, I thought Johnny Weissmuller was making a comeback. So Braud, only one victory to his career so far this season, and that was the national title just before the start of the Tour de France. Very difficult for teams from outside of France to get the title, because the race is very much dominated by the French teams. For example, Bouygues Telecom fielding around about 24 riders in the national championships. Crédit Agricole fielding 14 riders. The man we're looking at who took the title only had one teammate in the event, but he came up with the goods on the day and surprised everybody. But he has been around for a long time. He was the national time trial champion a number of years ago, but I think this year, given a little bit of a chance going across to this Caisse d'Epargne Lille Baleares team, he was in the Tour de France theoretically to look after the chances, of course, of Alejandro Valverde. But it's a difficult stage today, undulating to begin with. But, you know, if you think about today's profile, there is actually, on the run into the finish, the last 40 or 50 kilometers, hardly a centimeter of flat. It's either up or down. Very twisty, very difficult. And it's one of those stages where the riders will have all of their energy sapped away.
Very hard to hold your position in the peloton when it rocks and rolls, as it will do on the run into the finish in Vitré. So there's a long peloton now. That's an angry mood now as they start to head towards the leading breakaway. Plenty of work being done. Not the place to be at the back just at this moment. Let's remind ourselves as to who we think are the big contenders in this year's race. Hincapie's had one day in yellow. Savadelli's won the Tour of Italy. Floyd Landis, 3 big stage race wins this year. Cadel Evans, first Tour last year, finished 8th. Popovic right up in the Tour of Italy. Now he's ready for the Tour de France. Leipheimer has told us this week he can win the Tour de France. Well, these are the boys in the big time trial tomorrow who have got to do the ride of their lives, because that's where you strike. Be with us, enjoy it with us. We'll be on air at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Sorry, guys, on the West Coast. You're up early again for a 5:30 start. It's enhanced prime time, comes to you at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific. Don't miss this one. This, for many, especially if you think you can win the Tour de France, is when this race really does begin. So back with the 3 riders today who are opportunists. They're not thinking of winning the Tour de France, but a stage would go down very nicely as they continue through the area here with cheers all the way by the pockets of people as we cross from Normandy into Brittany. 2 terrific departments of France who are always locked together as great competitors in sport. And I remind you the other day of the man from Brittany, Louis Chambobet, and the man from Normandy, Jacques Anquetil. That'll keep you occupied as we take a break. Welcome back. A little bit of cloud around on today's stage of the Tour de France, but nonetheless the riders turning on the style here. 189 kilometers the distance today, round about 118 miles. There's 40 miles left to ride. Should take them just over an hour and a half, or maybe a little bit faster than that. Should be about an hour 20. Most of the work being done now by the boys in blue, the teammates of the man in yellow, Tom Bonen. A little bit of help from Johan van Summeren here, the workhorse for Robin McEwen's team. They've all got to show willing in the chase, otherwise the other teams get upset when you're racing for the big prizes. Now, one man who will be saving himself for tomorrow is, of course, George Hincapie. So he will have a quiet day today, he hopes. Let's find out with Craig Hummer.
George, it's been the usual chaotic first week. Case in point, yesterday's stage, Igor Martinez going down in the last few kilometers. How's the team been handling all the nervousness on the road?
Yeah, yesterday was definitely unfortunate. Igor is such a strong rider, and for him to see him go down was a bummer for all of us. But we're trying as best we can to stay out of trouble, and today is going to be another stressful day, I'm sure, but it's just important to stay in the front and try to stay out of the crashes.
Stage 5 certainly in the books. You've had 6 days, including the prologue, into your legs. How's your form so far this year?
I feel great, better than ever.
Speaking of which, let's look towards tomorrow and what you expect out of the time trial. Certainly you were close in the prologue. What are you going to be satisfied with in the time trial?
Yeah, I mean, it's a totally different event than the prologue, and it'll be pretty much my first real long time trial that I've ever gone for in the Tour. So I just hope to finish up there with the leaders. You know, if I could win, that would be awesome. We'll see.
Leader-wise, who do you think is going to be up there with you?
I think Levi, Floyd, Zabriskie, all the Americans for sure. And then Cadel Evans, Michael Rogers, Mazzolini, probably leaving a couple guys out, but they'll be good competitive guys.
All right, stay safe.
All right, thanks.
You guys.
Gosh, isn't it exciting that we're talking about Tour de France and all of those Americans, as George says, favourites for tomorrow's time trial. You must not miss that with us here on OLN tomorrow. And it was a shame for Martinez crashing yesterday. He plunged from 5th overall down to 88 in the classification, but he's still around to help the boys, and that's as important. 3.5 minutes is the latest gap coming at us, Paul, so they're continuing on, but I'm not too sure that they'll get more than about another 20 kilometres in the lead today.
Now, the main field are very much on fire this afternoon. You see a lot of riders. It's a strange day always, the day before an individual time trial, because the big leaders, the big men like George Hincapie, Levi Leipheimer, Floyd Landis, they actually want to have a reasonably easy ride if they can, because they know tomorrow is so important for them, because it starts to set up the hierarchy at the top end of the overall classification. The sprinters, for example, are thinking, we've had a great opening week to the Tour de France this year. Very rarely do we have the chance to stay in with a crack at the yellow jersey until the first weekend, because their chances are normally robbed at the end of the 3rd or 4th stage with a team time trial. So they're all very excited to chase it all down on a stage like this, because for Boonen, Robbie McEwen, and of course Oscar Freire, it could be the last time to have a crack at yellow.
Yes, it could be, because they'll take a bit of a bashing when we get into the mountains, and they may not have those same strong sprinting legs the other side of the mountains. you get some idea as the helicopter closes in here just how fast the race is going. It's so difficult to realize, even though they're a solid pack, they are flying over the highway here in the region of 27 to 30 miles an hour. You wouldn't average that for the same distance that they race in a motor car today, that's for sure, because you have all the problems of traffic. These fellas don't have any traffic problems. They do occasionally have leg problems. 61 kilometers to go. 3:33, nudge it out just a little bit again, so a bit of hesitation as the crowd enjoys first sight of the Tour de France, led here by Anthony Geslan. Interesting, yesterday we had Sam Dumoulin in the breakaway. He won the Route Adelaide this March. And funnily enough, that Geslan won the very same race in 2004. It's strange how those riders take strength from having won in the region to attack.
You get a motivation when you go back to the same area where you've had a success, and that happens with every one of these professional bike riders. If they go back to the same area, they really feel good.
Seeing the colours of the Tricolore of France here, the champion of France. It's the World Soccer Cup final coming up on Saturday, so France is in the final against Italy. Boy, the Tour de France may be under pressure. Well, as we look at these three riders here, let's just have a quick look back. We heard George talking about that nasty crash to Martinez. I think we can have a look at it now. Not a pretty sight, but thank heavens he wasn't hurt too much. This is our Nike 10-2 moment today. Watch for it. Bang. He really did hit the road with a thump, and I thought that surely will have broken his collarbone. But although it looks bad, this man got off the road, went to the doctors, had a drink on the move. He'll remember that from the days when he was a baby, I'm sure. And he got back into the group of two riders. He lost time. He lost his high place overall, but he's still in the race. That's our Nike 10-2 moment. And there's the beauty of the Tour de France. The farmers have been hard at work in the whole region in the north of France this last week, welcoming the Tour de France. There is the information on Igor. He joined the team this year, by the way. He came over from Euskaltel-Euskadi. He's 28. Quite clearly, Johan Brunel has seen a real talent in this rider to bring him across to the team. He's a good climber. Well, at 156 pounds, he should be. 48th in the 2005 Tour, a 41st finish in 2004. The Tour de l'Avenir down the bottom there, which he has won, is seen as the amateur Tour de France. It literally means the race of the future, and it builds young riders into stars for this event, and he won that. So clearly he is a rider of talent. 3 minutes 29 seconds the gap, so we went forward 4, we've gone back 4 now. We've gone forward 1. Well, they're obviously riding at pretty much the same place. Bon route to the riders in the polka dot, yellow and green. Green is McEwen, yellow is Bonin, and the polka dot at the moment is French. All cheers for the French. Jérôme Pinault. Done well again today. He snicked another point on the early stages. No more mountains today or hills as we head to the finish in Vitré. But there is one more sprint to come. And it's 3:28, so it's a reversal again, I'm afraid, for these two Frenchmen and a Swedish rider. The Tour goes on. Welcome back, the beauty of Brittany now, as we continue to course towards the finish of today's stage in Vitré. That's what it's like when you're behind bars, I guess. Well, this is what it's like when you're behind the pack here, as the riders now continue to decide. This man wants to unload everything excess, because now he's thinking more of the finish. This is Daniela Righi of the Lampre team, but everybody now figuring out no more rain. Let's get rid of our wet wear and lighten the load a bit and get ready to do the job in hand, because a little bit more than 1¼ hours to race to the finish now. 3:23 is the gap, holding and losing slightly as they accelerate the peloton in the Tour de France, and no sign of anybody really outthinking the sprinters today. We did have that cheeky ride early on when Bonin got into a leading breakaway of 18 riders, which included also Thor Hushovd. But not surprisingly, the peloton started to chase very hard. Took a while, but they did bring them back. At one stage, they got 1 minute and 30 seconds, so that was a serious move. But that was before, I'm afraid, we had any television pictures around the world. There's the people of Brittany enjoying the passage of the Tour here today. Geslan seems to be doing more work than anybody else. He is 26 years of age, just about a month ago had his 26th birthday. Today the birthday boy is Eric Zabel. He's 36 years of age, so time moves on, I'm afraid. Eric's been one of the great bike riders, and today is still the most current racing cyclist with the highest number of wins, almost 200. Well, let me remind you again about the Saab Watch and Win sweepstakes, because you need this information. You go to olntv.com, fly to the finish. You need today's code word. It is Phonak. Phonak, of course, the team of Floyd Landis. Landis' big day tomorrow in the time trial. He's got to do a good time to make sure he's going down to the mountains in the far south among the leaders of the Tour de France. Still locked in at virtually the same gap now at 3.5 minutes. No improvement at all. The peloton at 55.5 kilometers to go. Altogether, nobody behind the race. There was one non-starter today, Fabio Sacchi. He won a stage amongst other races in the Jacobs Creek Tour Down Under a couple of years ago. He's also finished third overall in that race. On Zabel's team, I presume he was ill, Paul, because we've got no medical bulletin on him.
And he was a man who we saw almost win a stage in the Tour de France a couple of years ago. He got away in a very long breakaway. 2 riders on the road down into Marseille, and instead of trying to do any foxy tricks down towards the end, we saw 2 riders sprinted out in a drag strip race, and poor old Fabio Sacchi, who I thought was going to get the win, crossed the line in 2nd place. But the first thing he did after the finish was actually congratulated the rider who was with him.
Well, I must say that it's a shame for Sacchi, because he's ridden the Tour 5 times, and this will be the first time he has never reached Paris. That's pretty sad for him. So he wouldn't have given up without a good reason, that's for sure. Johan van Summeren, gritting his teeth. He had a great ride yesterday in support of McEwen. Now he's come back to the front. He was involved in a rather nasty tumble about a mile or so from the finish yesterday.
I tell you what, Van Summeren went down rather hard, but in fact, poor old Gert Stekemans, the man who tried to lead out Robbie McEwen, was very apologetic at the finish. He said, really, Robbie, I'm so sorry. I was looking at the 500 meter to go banner. There was something in front of it, and he thought it was 200 meters to go. So he started the sprint 300 meters too early, and that left Robbie out in the wind a little bit too long. But Robbie was very philosophical about it and said, well, that's the way it goes.
Well, I guess when you've won 10 stage of the Tour, you can afford to forgive him. He wouldn't have done it if it had been his first win. As the riders now push on. These are the leaders. Lovely crowd here as we continue on towards the finish.
Well, in a breakaway like this, normally you would expect to share the pacemaking at the front. Well, the way the situation has broken down so far, Anthony Geslin has spent 44% of the time working at the front, so he's doing almost half of the work in this leading breakaway. Bra and Backstead have shared the lead between 29 and 27%, so they're doing roughly the same amount of work. But you can see the man in the pale blue shorts there at Bouygues Telecom. He is seriously motivated on this stage.
All right, well, as we continue the views, this is a wonderful cycling country when you're not on the Tour de France as well. They're quiet roads, these, normally. There they are, packing together. Well, let's not forget that tomorrow is the time trial. I can't emphasize enough, you've got to be with us for that, because then we'll know who is thinking of winning the Tour de France. Let's talk now with Levi Leipheimer with Craig Hammer.
After your success at the Dauphiné, you've made no secret about how you have come to this Tour de France to win. Looking towards tomorrow and this your first real chance to put a stamp on the GC, what are you going to be happy with?
You know, I think realistically, I'm not really expecting to win, but to limit my losses to some of the better time trialists like Landis or Rogers, that's basically my goal. Thanks.
Well, there's Zabriskie too. He'll also be looking to win as he comes back onto the peloton here, but he's nice and relaxed. That's what the experience of his first Tour de France done for him last year, as they now continue on the way towards the finish today. And these are the 3 leaders, and sitting at the back at the moment, first time we've seen him there for a while, is Anthony Geslin. Up in front doing the pace. Big Mag here, but he rides behind him because you won't feel any wind if you can ride behind Magnus. Anyway, let's remind ourselves, don't forget to go to olntv.com. All of the latest updates on the Tour de France, of course, and get up-to-the-minute analysis, recaps, race routes from the experts. Well, I hope that's what we are. Track contenders, leaderboard results, and exclusive rider forecasts. That's your link to the cyclism. That's your link to the Tour de France here on OLN. Study in motion here by the leading rider on Anthony Geslin, 26 years of age. It's a good age to be going well in the Tour de France, because from now on upwards he should be developing the stamina to have a great ride and hopefully get some good results along the way. Big Magnus Bagstead, a little bit older for Magnus, but it doesn't matter. There's the smiling face briefly of Stuart O'Grady, still riding with that broken vertebrae. This is the action of the Tour de France, and it will continue for more than an hour yet here, live on OLM. Welcome back to the Tour de France as we look down on our farmers in action again here. And this is the name of the town, Châtillon, and they've done a great job of that too. Well, this is the 6th stage of the Tour de France, but it is the 7th day of the Tour, remember, with the prologue time trial. We're heading today from Lisieux to Vitré. And the riders now are just working out when they're going to catch those 3 leaders, because I'm afraid to say catch them they will. They're driving well at the front now. There's 4 teams working on the chase, and that should do it. The gap is 3 minutes 19. The riders are Magnus Bagstead of Sweden, Anthony Geslin and Florent Brard, the 2 French riders. But let's just remind ourselves just how dangerous this opening week has been for the crashes. One man who's been not too far away from them, but not in them yet, is Robbie Hunter. I think we can explain it in his words right now.
Crashing is obviously something that no one wants to get involved with, but more often than not, you end up finding yourself in situations, especially in the big bunch sprints, that kind of out of your control, guy goes out in front of you or whatever the case may be, and you end up going down as well. But like I said, it's just one of those things that's part of the sport. Most of the time, you try and get away with your normal cuts and bruises, what the case is, but it does happen. Sometimes guys come out with broken bones and things like that, but it is part of the sport, and you have to deal with those things.
Yes, Robbie Hunter there, Africa's finest cyclist. These are the riders who have abandoned this tour due to injury. Valverde, the big favourite, went out with a collarbone. Decker went out with facial injuries and lost a few teeth. Poor Alfred Rodriguez too hurt his shoulder and wrist. Down below, injured riders who still continue. Sandy Cassar, Chris Horner with a dislocated little finger, Stuart O'Grady, cracked vertebrae. These guys are still riding this race, and they are absolute heroes. These are the boys who've got fresh souvenirs from only yesterday. We saw the crash of Igor Martinez, David Moncoutier, he hurt his left knee, Vogler, right knee. They should go out together tomorrow. Frank Schleck, multiple contusions, and the same for Peter Rolik and Isaac Galvez, who shouldn't be riding at the back. He's a sprinter. But today, Galvez is still riding at the back of the race, so he hasn't learned anything, has he? 3 minutes 16, the gap, 48.9, about 31 miles still to race now to the end of today's stage. Keep the pressure on. At 3 minutes and 17 seconds, slowly but surely, they are winding them back in here. These roads are very, what we call, heavy roads. There's Sandy Cassar, by the way. You can see his crash injuries on the back as he now pulled in. In fact, this is it's Philippe Gilbert, sorry. This is the other one who had his problems on the road to Valkenburg. So there was quite a lot of riding on the ground this time, wasn't there, Paul?
Definitely over the first 2 or 3 days. The way the main field is starting to ride, I can see them catching that leading group of 3 riders just inside of 17 kilometers to go. But that might all change if the leading group of 3 desist in sharing the pacemaking. And basically, we've seen them reasonably sharing the pacemaking in the front, even though the one man from Bouygues Telecom, Geslin, seems to be doing a little bit more than the 2 others.
Well, they haven't got a great gap now. They were never given a little bit more than 5 minutes. Here's the face of Philippe Gilbert. We're moving back up the field here. The rider is alongside of there, the Agri-Turbo rider, Samuel Puinek. He's one of the wild card entries in the Tour. The Agri-Turbo is not a Pro Tour team, which are the top professional Tour teams around the countryside. Every race they ride, so they got a wild card. Not surprising, French team. Gilbert is one of the very, very good Belgian riders, and a rare Belgian rider placed on a French team here as he moves up. Very difficult to make progress through the peloton at this stage of the race.
You've got to meander up through the race. You've got to wait for a slight slowing. You've got to wait for a chance. You've got to wait for the gap to open up in front of you. Most of these riders' handlebars is around about 40 to 44 centimeters wide, or about 16, 17 inches. And you've got to have the knack of being able to judge the width of the gap in front of you and to be able to force your handlebars in there. Now, if you're a dangerous rider, you get yourself a bad reputation. But all of these riders are very agile, and you get to understand how certain riders handle themselves in the main field. And that's why when you see a dangerous guy coming through, you usually take a chance of getting out of the way.
Well, our heart rate today telling us Matthias Kessler is riding at 43 kilometers an hour at the moment, a heartbeat of 185, so he's pretty high up towards his max today, which is 185. He's on 164 beats per minute.
Cruising along at about 43 kilometers an hour.
So the situation, 3:08, the peloton still deciding how they're going to catch these three riders, which are Magnus Baxter, Flonenbord, Anthony Jeslam. They left a group of 18, which included Tom Bonen. The peloton wanted Tom Bonen's group back. They got him. These boys have been allowed to run, but the gap is coming down, and so is the race towards the finish as well. So there they are. These are the three boys working hard. We think they'll get caught to 10 miles from the finish today. That's the projected average speed at the moment. Who knows? These boys can only dream of the Tour de France. You can watch it with us live on the OLN, and the finish is looming ahead. Stay with us for the big battle for the win today. Welcome back. Just about an hour from now, all the riders on today's stage of the Tour de France will be in the shower, but which one will be the winner? As always, that's the question now. Will the breakaways outwit the big peloton here? At the moment, those three leaders, Bagstead, Gisela and Bra, are 3:29 ahead of the field. But the I beg your pardon, 2:38 ahead of the field, but the race is now chasing them down. And we are going to be entertained for a very exciting last 30 kilometers today, because they turn into a headwind, which is quite strong here at the finishing line in Vitré, undulating as well. And we should see a very exciting finale on today's stage. And the peloton now stretching out like a piece of elastic. Another 2 seconds knocked off, Paul. 2:36 now, the gap. And so I reckon, yes, 20 kilometers? Jeslan here shaking the lactic acid out of those legs. It's not going to happen in a few minutes, that.
Well, it is not going to happen in a few minutes. The only way to get that lactic acid would be to turn off the pressure from the engine room of Faction and just turn down the gears and just try to cool down the body. But when you're in a breakaway in the Tour de France, hoping to survive to the finish, sorry, mate, but you can't do that. Looking at the way these riders have worked, they've actually been fairly evenly sharing the pacemaking at the front. Initially, the man doing the majority of the work was Jeslan, this rider with the blue helmet. But since then, the other riders have put their back into it as well. You need to work evenly in a breakaway situation like this. Everybody needs to carry his weight in a breakaway to build up a maximum advantage. Then, of course, to try and hold on to it. And once again, the artists have been out, Phil. There have been some great sights with the straw this afternoon.
Well, I don't know how they come up with the ideas here for the decor along the route, but the artisans of Brittany, just like Normandy, are simply superb. As the Tour de France at Montaudin. And they're thanking the local French television network here for the tremendous coverage it gives the Tour de France, but its viewing figures are superb. And remember that it's also clashing with the popularity, especially in France, of the World Cup soccer as well. So Cedric Vasseur driving at the front now, along with others on the big teams, trying to bring their sprinters back into play today. 2:25 is the latest gap. Well, as we look here at the men who are racing across the green fields of northern France, what about the green bays of the snooker table here, or the pool table, because we're talking about the IPT King of the Hill 8-ball shootout. We're waiting to see who'll be crowned the undisputed King of Pool on the richest payday in the history of the sport. That's the IPT King of the Hill 8-ball shootout. Series finale will come to you Sunday at 6 p.m. here on OLN. Yet another lovely chateau down there. as we riders won't always see these because our helicopter takes time out and wanders a little bit to check out on the beautiful buildings. It's a bound here in Brittany as we are now. It looks like there's nobody in again because they'll all be down the road watching the passage of the Tour de France. 3 riders slowly but surely are being reeled in just now. Just let me remind you, the best placed in the breakaway is Anthony Geslan. He's 74th, only a minute and 15 seconds behind the yellow jersey of Tom Bonan. At the moment, he has the honour of saying he's the virtual leader of the Tour de France on the road. I don't think that will be the case in about 45 minutes' time, but you never know. Be back. We'll take a break. Welcome back as we look at the scenery now around Vitré, where we're headed for. This is a wonderful fortified area around here. We are now in Brittany. As we head towards the coast, we get a little bit closer to the coast in Rennes for the time trial tomorrow. And then we head out onto the coast as we go to Lorient before the first day of rest when the Tour de France heads for the mountains. Well, the field are still together. While you've been away, they've been hard at work. At 2 minutes and 5 seconds. They've just taken back a second. It won't make any difference. The green jersey of McEwen, the yellow jersey of Tom Bonan, still in the peloton. They've got their teammates racing at the front as they now course towards the finish in Vitré. But thanks to AMD, we can now show you where the Tour de France is going and where, in fact, we have been today. We all started in Strasbourg, did a tour of a few countries. Now we're heading round to Paris, where we won't reach Paris, of course, till the 23rd of July. We are now up north. The far left of our picture, Lisieux, is where we started, bound today for the finish in Vitré. Any little hills that are bounded as far as the King of the Mountains were at the beginning, as you can see, that 1/3 category climb. Now we're heading down towards the sprint at Jouvigny, which comes in about, let me just see, in about 9 kilometers time, or 5 miles or so. Almost on the 2-minute mark. We'll soon be inside that. At 2:01, it's coming down quite quickly now, Paul. 23 miles to go, which is about 38 kilometers.
38 kilometers. There's a sprint point coming up at 162 kilometers into the race at Javigne. There are 6 seconds time bonus there, 4 and 2. And they may well be thinking about trying to grab those riders back before that sprint point. And in that case, I think we will have a very serious sprint for the line. Robbie McEwen, if he wants to get the yellow jersey this afternoon, he's still in with a slight chance. He's 24 seconds off the lead. He would need to win the stage and the next time bonus if he was to run out the yellow jersey. It's a tall order, but you know, the way this race is developing, there's all kind of strange things can happen.
Well, we're racing to the town of Ernay now, which means that we are into the last 39 kilometers of the day. A little bit of French architecture for you, or French art, as they race toward Vitré. And these people all enjoying the race as well. But, you know, I don't think Robbie can do that, Paul, but I know you'd love to. But it's more likely that Tom Bonan will keep his lead today, if all goes well for him, but which means he gets to start last man of the 172 riders tomorrow. Big honour for him, especially as he's a world champion.
Especially as he's a world champion. The last time a world champion took the lead in the Tour de France was 16 years ago, and the man on that occasion was a man by the name of Greg LeMond. He'd won the World Championships the year before in 1989 on a very tough circuit in Chambéry. And I think even on that occasion, Sean Kelly was placed too. Sean Kelly never quite got the big title that I think he always deserved, because Kelly ran out so many times close to the victory, and on a number of occasions Greg LeMond went one better.
He used the wrong gear. Sean Kelly told me at the time he used the wrong gear, and of course that was the time that Konishev became the first Russian professional medalist at the World Championships. There we are, long thin line at the back. Well, we love this because it means our camera can move up to the back of the peloton, you see, but they're all pinned over there by the speed and by the wind coming now from the right of our picture. And believe me, it's so hard to hold that wheel in front. They make it look fairly easy, but if we could see their faces right now, believe me, it would be tough. Well, it's not hard to do Saab Watch and Win sweepstakes, I can tell you that. OLNTV is where you go.com. Saab Fly to the Finish. The code word today is Phonak. And to find out what we're talking about, go to our website, of course. The peloton from the front now as they're really beginning to drive. The Belgians and the Dutch cyclists tend to be the best riders against the wind, and when the pressure's on, that's why they're driving at the front. They love this sort of racing. Tom Bonham will like it today now. Good road surface. The peloton now slowly carving into that lead. It was over 5 minutes. It's now 1 minute and 53 seconds. And the peloton are becoming a little bit agitated by the 3 riders out front today. There's the man dreaming of victory, and more on yellow. We'll see in a moment. Welcome back. They're going quicker than ever now at the moment, just on 33 kilometers to race from Lisieux to Vitré in France today. We are on the next stage of the Tour de France, which is number 6, and it's our 7th day of racing. The 3 riders who have led almost since the 70th kilometre today are now 1 minute 39 ahead. These 3 men scampering for the finish. Now, they're the roads we were talking about earlier, you see. They appear flat when we always look from the side, but they are not. Those little drags really hurt the legs. Big Magnus now trying to keep the lift up here in the pace, because they're riding at approximately 26.5 miles an hour today. They've got 32 kilometres, 20 miles to go to the finish. So as they continue on, as we look at the face here of Florent Bras, let's have a look at Frankie Andreu as he now looks at the Nissan next generation of technology. Ron Rims.
Some riders are really picky about their position on the bike, but also there's a lot of riders that are finicky about the wheels that they choose. Shimano makes 4 different types of wheels for the riders here at the Tour. For example, this deep dish one, which is carbon fiber, it allows it to go through the air a little bit quicker. It's more for speed. Then for a lighter weight rider or a climber, they have the shallower rim, also of carbon fiber. This thing only weighs about 1,300 grams. Now, Shimano uses angular contact bearing insides, which not only supports the vertical load, but also the lateral load when a rider is sprinting or cornering hard. Also, these wheels, they're called tubulars. The tires are actually glued onto the wheels, and it's about a 3-day process to get these tires to adhere correctly. Obviously, the riders really have to trust their wheels, because those are the 2 main contact points with the road, and especially in these sprint stages.
Yes, and that's the Nissan next generation technology of the Tour. Quite complicated, isn't it, some of this technology? Anyway, back with the man is quite simple now. Just go as fast as you can. That's Johan van Summeren setting the pace for Davide Malotto. And there's the shot the front riders didn't want to see. The pack can see them. 1 minute 30, Paul, and the horrible sight now. That gap represents 1.5 minutes.
Well, the horrible thing about it is it's a very long straight road, and the main field now, they can see their prey, as they have done on every day of the Tour de France since we left Strasbourg. We've had a breakaway attempt go, and down towards the end, all of a sudden the main field starts to see the prey, and that's when the guys who are suffering on the front, those team workers, the team helpers, the domestiques, they've been suffering like dogs for the last 30 or 40 kilometers. But now they can see why. They can see the cars in front. They can't actually physically see the riders, but they can see the lights flashing. They can see the helicopter over the top of these riders, and they know the job is almost done.
Yes, they will roll out now at 19 miles to go to the finish, 31 kilometers. And these rolling hills now will take them all the way to the finish. It doesn't end at the finish either, because it's a steady climb up from Vitré. We come through the centre of the town, past the railway station, and we climb just very steadily up towards the line itself, which is out on the outskirts of the town, because it's very difficult to find a road wide enough in some of these French towns to finish the Tour de France. This one is already a pretty narrow approach.
Very tricky approach to the line, especially around about 3 or 4 kilometers from the end, because you come right through the very heart of Vitré. They've taken out a number of traffic circles and traffic directional islands, but still I think it's quite a scary proposition. To make it safe, we really would need a team like a team of Mario Cipollini. In the old days, Mario Cipollini, let's not forget, was a winner here in 1995, and he would have had the whole of the main field, Phil, lined out completely in one big long line, and for me that makes it an awful lot safer. But what we've had here at the Tour this year is a lot of very dangerous sprints, because nobody's got the power to stretch the main field out.
Which for us, of course, has made it a very exciting sprint finish. Fortunately, we've been able to recognise the riders so far. I must say, if Isazi Inaki had won yesterday, the rider in the orange jersey, that might have caught us out, because getting up front in this quality of a sprint, that was a great achievement by him yesterday. He didn't quite get the better of Bonen and Oscar Freire. minute 24 now for the peloton, but they can see the race now. We are on a long straight road here as we make our way down towards Vitre. A change of direction will bring about a headwind, and this road will be up and down like a roller coaster now all the way to the finish. There's Jeslan stretching his back and taking a look over the following cars. Well, he'll see the peloton now because it's a long straight line behind him. The gap is down a minute 24.
Nice to see the French national champion in a move like this, showing off his tricolor jersey. There'll be a different coloured jersey on Sunday. I presume the French are going to play in their blue national jersey. Allez le bleu has been the cry of the day, I think, along the sides of the road here this afternoon. They'd love to see a French winner. I'm not sure that's going to be the case on today's stage, but they might have a chance tomorrow with Christophe Moreau, who's again a rider who has a very good ability to time trial, and he's ridden in the shadow of the pack since we started and left Strasbourg a long way behind. It's a big rendezvous for everybody now tomorrow who wants to win the Tour de France. I think today again is going to be a rendezvous for the sprinters.
By the end of the day, we'll be just on 1,300 kilometers ridden in the Tour de France in this first week of racing, about 750 miles or so. Johan van Summeren has been a brilliant workhorse for Robbie McEwen. He's been repaid well too, because McEwen in this opening week to date won 2 stages and has a lead in the green jersey competition of 1 point. Florent Brad, who left the French teams and joined this Spanish team, Case d'Apan, which is the Balearic Islands team as well, sponsored it. Magnus Bagsted, he rides on an Italian team, Liquigas.
Getting themselves all concentrated. It's a tough situation psychologically to be in for those riders now, because they're keeping a very close eye on the time checks as we're keeping a close eye on the time checks. They're looking at the boards to see how far it is to go to the finish, and they know what exactly is happening. Now, this is an interesting heart rate coming through on the computer, because Jose Riano is a rider we haven't talked an awful lot about. Won the King of the Mountains in the Giro. He's a maximum heart rate attainable of 195 beats a minute. And at the moment, stuck in the main field, he's getting sucked along by the pressure of the slipstreams of all the bigger riders in front of him, and he's hovering there at 140. That's almost 60% of his maximum. He could be a dark horse when we get to the mountains.
Well, we'll see. Another one we can give you is Ralph Grabsch. He's also cruising today, putting out 204 watts of power at 127 beats per minute, well inside his max. And Ralph isn't a bad finisher. He might be a lead-out man today for one or two of the teammates, because he looks as though he's enjoying it.
Well, the thing to do on these flat stages is to try and conserve as much energy as possible. The only way to do that, if you can conserve energy on a long stage like this, is try and find a point in the pack where you actually get sucked along a fraction. If you ride directly behind a rider in front of you, you can save between 20 and 30% of your energy. But if you can ride in the middle of the pack and get sucked along, you can save an awful lot more energy than that.
Well, 1,000 meters to the sprint, so they should survive at least to fight out the last time bonuses on the day. So even if Robbie McEwen does win now, he shouldn't likely be the leader, because he can't get enough win bonus over Tom Boonen to get the yellow jersey now. He needed the 6 seconds here, so he won't be too worried about that. He's looking for the win rather than the points today.
Well, Tom Boonen can tick one more off, because now there's only, as far as I can see, 2 riders really of the sprinters who have a chance of beating Boonen in the overall classification at the end of the day, and that's Thor Hushovd and Oscar Freire, because they are at 17 and 19 seconds down in the overall standings. I don't think Michael Rogers or George Hincapie will actually go for the sprint this afternoon. Rogers is only 13 seconds down, Hincapie 17 seconds down. But I just wonder if Johan Museo is right. Johan Museo is a consultant with the Quick Step squad, and he reckons today this is a Tom Boonen finish.
Wow, well, we'll wait and see. Museo wasn't a bad rider. Well, these are the 3 riders approaching the sprint. I don't think we'll even see a sprint again, because none of these 3 have an interest in that green jersey competition for the points available, nor the yellow jersey for the small bonus time available. But what they've done is take all of this away from the big 2 at the moment, Tom Boonen and Robbie McEwen. So we go to the finish now, status quo, exactly as we started the race this morning. A 1-point advantage in the green jersey for Boonen over McEwen, and just a few seconds advantage in yellow for Tom Bonan. Yep, it's all down on the final sprint today. Oh yes, they've still got to catch these 3 riders up front first, but that should happen in the next 3 or 4 miles or so. We'll take a break. Rejoin us for the action on the Tour de France. Welcome back. The Maillot Jaune are draped out of the windows here of the villages of Brittany. The peloton make their way through these narrow streets. This is our Trek aerial view today as the men now line up for the finish within 25 kilometres, just over 15 miles from the line. Under the escort here of Cedric Vasseur, just for the moment at least, a teammate of Tom Bonan. Those are the 3 leaders with the camera right locked in behind as they're now racing as best they can with just a lead of 1 minute and 11 seconds. Well, they're absolutely flying here at the minute. They're probably up in the region of 60 kilometres an hour on this little descent. What goes down, I'm afraid, for Magnus also goes up.
Big Maggie on the front, and it looks as if out on the course, the rain is starting to come in. A slight misty rain here this afternoon. These riders were very lucky to get into the breakaway, because when this breakaway formed at 70 kilometres, it was 18 riders strong, and there were 2 big names in the breakaway. Of course, Thor Hushovd and the yellow jersey himself. Tom Bonan decided he would try and get away from the main field. But the main field were not going to give any free tickets to the yellow jersey this afternoon. They chased it down to 15, 30 seconds. These 3 guys escaped. As soon as they caught Hushovd and Tom Bonan, it seemed as if they cut off the pressure in the main field, and these guys were given an advantage of 5.5 minutes. But now the tide is turning.
But it has been a typical day that the race leaders wanted, the ones that have got the ambition to win the Tour de France. They've stayed in that pack. There's been no bad falls today. Let's hope it stays that way, as they on the eve of their big moment now. The stars of the Tour, the men that want to win, have got to produce a big time trial tomorrow. It's a long way too, and that's most important. And so they're getting the ride they want today, which, if you can have a rest in a race like this, they're getting it today.
Big man on the front, Johan van Sommeren, second in the World Championships when it was in Hamilton in Canada at the under-23 level of the sport. He's certainly ridden well here this afternoon. Robbie McEwen, if he wins today's stage, needs to say a very big thank you. But McEwen always does at the end of every stage, goes back to the team and thanks them all individually for the work they put in. He's found a new lead-out man over the last couple of days in Gert Steegmans after the very sad crash of Freddie Rodriguez. Rodriguez didn't even make it into Holland. He went down hard on the road to Valkenburg with Eric Dekker. And sadly for Freddie, I thought he was in pretty good form. And he and Robbie McEwen seem to be working very well together as a team.
Yeah, poor old Freddie fell off with Eric in Verviers in Belgium as they were heading towards Holland. 1 minute and 10 seconds now. Still the same 3 are out in front: Bra, Jeslan and Bagsted.
Well, you can see the way they've been working over the last few kilometres. Bra has continued to do a large bulk of the work, with Jeslan doing a little bit less than he did earlier on at 34%. And Maggie Bagsted, I think, now starting to weaken a fraction, because over the last few kilometres he's actually only been contributing around about 22% to the success of this breakaway. And I'm not surprised, because if you look at the way Bagsted has been riding, he seems to have been rocking his shoulders a fraction. And I think either psychologically or the fact is physiologically it's starting to hurt.
Just look at the pack there, Paul. There's just those 3 or 4 guys working at the front, and everybody else has fanned out behind them now. Nobody wants to help them. It's their job to try and close this gap down. It's down now to 65 seconds too. There's the yellow car, which is the neutral service car, by the way, behind the 3 leaders. He sits behind the official team cars of the team leaders up there. And if they want to go back and look after the main field, then he'll take over looking after the rider left behind up here. 63 seconds, the gap that's coming down quite quickly now, really. And they'll just stay out there as long as they can and hope they can hang on once the run into Vitré starts. But anyway, as they make their way, remember that tomorrow is a huge day in the Tour de France, a huge day for OLN. Don't forget, the Tour de France coverage continues with us tomorrow. Stage 7, that separates the peloton as the riders will compete in the individual time trial. Our live coverage begins tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Eastern, and then you can catch the enhanced primetime show coming to you at 8 p.m. Eastern and 9 Pacific. Follow the journey of the men to the first time trial tomorrow, just who will be the new king on July the 23rd in Paris. We might get some idea tomorrow when the long time trial rocks and rolls its way around Brittany. Magnus Backstedt been something of a hero today. He's tried all week to do something, hasn't been able to do anything. Now he's got into a breakaway, sadly, at 62 seconds the gap. I don't think they can stay away, but they're still not going to give up. Nudged out a further second at just under 20 kilometres to go, over rather. Well, they've seen the 25 kilometres away. I didn't think they'd see the 20 kilometres, but they have. And they've only lost about half a minute in 5 kilometres. There's the local cycling club here. Seeing the Tour de France on the roads they probably know every inch of the way of. We'll take another break. Rejoin us as we head towards Vitré. Welcome back. Same three guys putting the pressure on, but it's not great news for them. This is a 189 kilometre stage today from Lisieux to Vitré. And stage 6 of the Tour de France. Tomorrow is the time trial when the big players start to strike. Just now, though, these boys are holding it and doing a really good job at keeping this race at around a minute to a minute and 10. For the moment, the big pack has stopped closing in on them. So now they know they have a little bit of a show of defiance on their hands here. And we're getting down to just 10 minutes from the end. There's the peloton, who are still leaving it to the same handful of riders we've seen every day this week. It's their job to try and shut it down so the sprinters can have their day. And it's the same teams on the front. Crédit Agricole, Quick-Step from Belgium, De Vitam and Lotto. They are doing all of the work down there. There's the banner coming up. I think it's a banner. No, it's just a bridge, I think, that they put on the road. It'll advertising the department of the Île-et-Vilaine. That's where we've entered now. Well, as we look at the peloton here, it might yet be a bunch sprint. It should be. So we've had Robbie Ventura down on the course to tell us what it might be like if they're sprinting for the line. Let's go to Robbie.
Oscar Freire won in a headwind sprint yesterday. Today's sprint is different. It's a tailwind. The athletes could reach speeds of 45 miles an hour in this final run into the finish. Tom Boonen has one last chance of holding on to his yellow jersey. Look for his team to really come up big in the final 4K and hold it together for him so he can battle Robbie McEwen to the line in the final 200 meters. The breakaway riders have been a little bit tricky this Tour de France. The teams have had to burn up way too much energy. Look for Tom's team to take it a little bit easy on the chase today and deliver him to the final 100 meters with fresh legs.
Well, so far, Robbie, you're absolutely right. Let's have a look at what happened yesterday. The man who wins is on the left, Oscar Freire, and Tom Boonen had to take it late against the wind with no teammates left to help him, and Oscar Freire profited by that with an inch-perfect victory. That's how you win, when you get your sprint right. Otherwise, you lose, like everybody else did yesterday when you get it wrong. This is a very, very nice home straight sprint finish today. While we look here at Quick-Step, Paul, those boys up front have pegged this breakaway for the moment. There's 107, they're holding it. They might catch them at around about 10 or 11 kilometres to go, but they are still showing a great deal of defiance. But what worrying me at the moment is the fact that here at the finish, the rain clouds are getting closer and closer. It's becoming quite dark.
The rain clouds are getting very heavy, and that could make the big difference coming into town, because that's basically where we ate last night, right in the heart of this town of Vitré, and where we had dinner was a very tricky roundabout. The riders are going to have to negotiate at about 3 kilometres to go. They've tried to clean it up. They've taken out some of the directional islands, but to me, it's going to be a very tricky run-in for the main field. The main field really, I feel, need to catch these riders before 8 kilometres to go. Otherwise, it's going to be very dangerous.
I absolutely agree, and it's very narrow too. It goes past the town railway station, which is on the main route to Brittany, coming out of Paris, and it is quite narrow. It is slightly uphill, which might slow them down just a little bit, but these boys up front, as we go under 15 kilometres to go now, and we dip inside the 1 minute to 58 seconds, but really it's taken them 10 kilometres to lop off half a minute.
It's a long battle, but I think they're just leaving them out there to fry for a fraction. You can see the actual physical distance between them, and the main field and the teammates of the sprinters can actually judge now, because it's a physical contact they have with the leading group of 3, and so they know just exactly what speed these guys are riding, and they know how much energy they've got in their own legs to accelerate at the last possible moment, because they're in a difficult scenario here, because they want to save enough energy to lead out the sprint, but they also need to dispense energy to catch the 3 leaders.
Absolutely right. But the thing is that these three riders now, it's unfortunate for them, but the actual roads do climb a little bit now as we get up towards Vitré, and that's going to happen. There's a Breton flag, first one I've noticed on the road today, which surprises me, but there you are. The Breton are out in force here. As they'll tell you, they're not French, they're from Brittany, and it's a big difference if you're local. Happy days on the Tour de France. Somebody's going to win soon. Join us after the break. Come back to the beauty of Brittany here as we now come to the closing stages of the day's stage. There's stage 6 of the Tour de France. 3 riders are clear, but I'm afraid not for much longer, because the gap is now just on a half a minute today, and we are running towards the finish. Everybody, Jimmy Casper has just had a flat tyre, but he's got back into the group thanks to a little bit of teamwork. Officially it's 34 seconds. We're just on 11.7 kilometers from the line. These 3 riders now are right in the gun sights of the peloton. They can be seen by the peloton, and it shouldn't be long before they come snapping up behind them. Look at the face here of Cedric Vasseur as he drives on, with a little bit of help from the boys from Crédit Agricole. These are superb camera shots. Our cameraman isn't as close as you think. It's just the lens on the camera. There's where the motorbike is placed out front. The peloton is thundering along now as we come into the last 11 kilometers of the day. And as the peloton races here towards the line, I have to say it is getting darker and darker. And rain now would cause chaos in this peloton, and it might, of course, aid the escape of the 3 riders who are now less than 30 seconds in front.
And however, they are 2.5 kilometers from coming into the outskirts of Vitré, and they will be realizing that. They will know that. The team manager will have given them that information. They will hope to survive into the outskirts of town, because with the road starting to dampen a fraction now, been very hot for the last few days. When you get a small covering of dampness on a surface like this, it makes it treacherous. It turns a good racing road into an ice rink.
Yes, it does, and it gets very much narrower than this. It's very nice at the moment, but it gets a little bit narrower once we get further down. There's 10 kilometers or 6 miles to go. 3 riders in front. In the distance there is the 10-kilometer banner. These are the 3 riders. They've done terrifically well because the peloton have had them in sight since the 25th kilometer to go. They're now 10. Look at the face of Magnus Backstead. He's virtually a home boy back in England, because back in Great Britain, because he's Welsh these days, and he goes under that banner. But they have them in sight. 26 seconds, but the weather is closing in.
The weather is closing in. Still dry on the finish line. You can feel the urgency now starting to mount. Everybody realizing these guys at the front have been riding like this for about 40 kilometers. Heart rates now are starting to rise. Matthias Kessler has got a maximum heart rate of 185. He's currently working at around about 163. So the heart rates are starting to get up. The pain is starting to go through the riders' bodies. These men who've been working so hard on the front have got one thing in their minds: catch these 3 men before we get to the confusion of the outskirts and the town of Vitré.
No one between the leaders now and the main peloton. All the service cars, the referees ordered away, because leave that gap free of obstacles. No carrots for the horses to chase back there. These are the 3 men who are now the attraction. Give them every chance to stay away to the finish. Little more than 8 kilometers to go, just over 5 miles, 20 seconds the gap. They aren't giving up by any means. These 3 are giving this their best shot today, because once we're into Vitré, it is narrow, it is twisting, and there's still a chance they might outwit the peloton.
They might just do it now. Here's the traffic circles, the roundabouts as we start to get into town. Few spots of rain on the camera lens there, indicating the rain is still high. It's not completely on the road. 20 seconds, 20 seconds for the 3 leaders. The French national champion Florent Bras is really digging deep now, Phil. He wants to survive. He wants to get into the safety of the confusion of town. Somebody took the wrong turning there.
1 or 2 did, and that's lost them a lot of places in the peloton at a crucial stage of the race, but they're safe as they snake through that inside of the roundabout. That, of course, is the correct way to take a roundabout here in France, as Magnus Backstead there now begin to wonder, what am I doing in this breakaway? Are we going to succeed or not? No one allowed in the gap now, apart from the odd referee on the motorbike and the policeman who guide the race around France. 17 seconds is the gap. They can't possibly survive, but they're not going to stop trying. Look at the face of Johan van Summeren, trying to get these riders up to the leaders because they want the sprinters to have their say on the eve of the time trial.
And do you know what he's thinking about? He's thinking about one thing. Oh, my back hurts so much, but Robbie's going to take over. Robbie's going to do it for Team De Vitamon Lotto, for Belgium and for Australia, because the Belgians have really adopted Robbie McEwen here. He conducts his interviews after the finish, not only in Australian, but also in Flemish, and pretty well too.
Yeah, well, he's got a Flemish wife, Angelique. I'm sure if he gets it grammatically wrong, she'll put him right when he gets home. This is now the French champion on the right. What a way for the French champion to bring the race towards Brittany here today. Riding in the leading group. When the camera pulls back, it's always the sign of doom, because underneath come the head of the peloton now. A lot of riders want to be near the front but not on the front. And look at the difference of the movement in the peloton now as they try to reposition. Brad is not going to give up. Look at him go.
Look at his face. It's got anger and anguish written all over it. At the same time, looks over his shoulder. Well, you can't see round the corner there. That will give him a little bit of hope because he can't yet see the front end of the main field. He'll say, we'll push it a bit more. We'll try and survive until we get into town. If we get into town, it might get confusing. We might survive. But this is a very long drag. It's Team Lampre on the front now, trying to sort it out for their man Bernati.
Well, they've also got Alessandro Ballan, who was up there yesterday now, and Jens Voigt is in there looking at the computer. He also is getting a high heartbeat just now as he tries to get a little bit excited. Maybe we've seen pictures of Stuart O'Grady today looking a lot more relaxed with his broken vertebrae. Maybe he's feeling a bit better.
Salvatore Commesso, the man with the beard on Team Lampre, over to the right-hand side, getting back into the line. These guys will not give up. Look at the face of Bra here, just looking in front of him to see if he can see the top of this climb. Doesn't look like a climb to you sitting at home in front of the TV, but this has dragged up now for around about 1 kilometre. It's down now, Phil, to 40 metres. Then it'll be 30, then it'll be 20, then it will be all over.
And then it'll be 10 seconds the other way, because I doubt these boys will hold on to the peloton now once they come to the top of this climb. We are running into the last 6.5 kilometres now to the finish. They might just get to see the 5 kilometre banner if they are lucky, but after that they'll be in the heart of the pack here. A little bit of concern from us because we know that the centre of Vitré is very narrow and quite dangerous, and let's hope they can get through Vitré. Then it becomes a fabulous approach to the line.
Well, it's looking good for an organised chase through town, because one team, Team Lampre, has decided this afternoon we're going to string it all out. They had all of their men at the front. They are thinking about the big man who was caught out in that crash at 4.5 kilometres to go yesterday, Daniele Bernati. But these three men, Phil, they know the main fielder behind them. The main fielder are only 35 metres, but they will not give up.
Well, they're also making the other teams chase. I mean, Magnus Bagstedt has a guy on the team, Luca Paolini, who could win this race in the sprint, and if he's forcing the others to chase him, then they're taking the pressure off Paolini, who will only follow. So there's still tactics to be played, even if the catch is almost done and dusted. 11 seconds is the gap now, coming down rapidly. 8 seconds. The riders in the peloton now, they're getting near the top of their stress levels, and they're getting near the top of their maximum heart rates. These boys in mauve and blue are racing for two riders, two sprinters, Ballan and Daniel, I forgot his name.
Bernati.
Thank you very much.
Daniel Bernati crashed yesterday, 4.5 kilometres to go. Big long line, but this big long line is organised, yet they cannot close down the last 30 metres of those three leaders. Once they get caught, they will get probably squeezed straight out of the back of the pack. Now it's Geslin. Look at the way his shoulders are rocking and rolling. There's not much power left in his body anymore. There's a little bit left in those thighs. They look over the shoulder. Sorry, guys, we're not going to survive. But you know what? If you want to win the stage this afternoon, you come to us, because we're not going to wait for you.
Well, can you believe it? 4.5 kilometres from the line. The peloton have done it again. They've caught all the fugitives of the day. Oh, well, they haven't quite, but they will by 4 kilometres, and then we're all together. A mass charge through Vitré, and that's not for the nervous, I can tell you, as you'll see in a moment. And then out for away from the railway station, steady climb, a sharp right, sharp left, and then we're heading out towards the finish. And Florent Bras says, catch me if you can.
Well, I'm the French national champion, bleu, blanc, rouge, red, white and blue. I am not going to give up. If you want to sprint and take the glory on this stage of the Tour de France, come and catch us. This has been an interminable chase. They've been at 35, 40 meters for the last couple of kilometers, and Team Lampre are now getting themselves organized at 4 kilometers to go. At 3 kilometers to go is the nasty circuit that the riders will have to go through.
This is the first time this Tour we've seen a chain of riders from the same team on the front. They must be confident. There is the catch now at 4 kilometers from the finish. What a great effort by those three. Hang on in there, boys. Stay with the peloton. But it's interesting to see that Quick-Step and Lampre are the two teams getting this together. Bonin on the right, Hushoff on his wheel. Of course, we won't see Robbie McEwen for a while yet.
Well, Robbie McEwen is about to take off his cloak, the cloak of Harry Potter, the one that makes you invisible, but he will at 100. Lampre have got this organization with a certain amount of help now coming from Quick-Step. They need to keep it fast. They need to keep it in a long line, otherwise it's going to get very dangerous. They're looking now at around about 3.5 kilometers to go. This is the drag up through the center of Vitré. There is the indication. Vitré is where we are. There is 3 kilometers to go. Now it's organized. Now this is going to be a good sprint. Keep it long, keep it straight and safe.
Well, this is where they cross the center of the square here now, with the railway station on the right. It gets a bit of cobblestones as they start to go up towards the line now. And Tom Bonin has got control of things. That's the area where the railway station is now as we start the climb. Bonin has moved up here now nicely onto the place. But watch out with Lampre. They're confident today.
They're feeling good. They've got the organization. When a team works for you like this, it puts responsibility onto the shoulders of the sprinter. The pale blue jersey on the wheel of Tom Bonin there is David Kopp. He was right up in the sprint there yesterday. Round the corner nice and safely. They've got through town without too much of an incident. Tom Bonin is riding right up at the front end of the main field, but it's the Lampre squad for Daniele Benati who are thinking about it here this afternoon. But Boonen will rely on his last men to try and lead him up to the line. He'll rely, of course, on men like Pozzato. He'll rely on men like Matteo Tossato to try and get him up to the last 300 or 400 meters. Then he will try and unleash his sprint. It's not worked so far this Tour. It might work today.
Well, they've just gone under the 2 kilometers banner there as they race towards the line now. And Lampre still have control of this, which is a good sign. We haven't seen a train of the right team do this at all week, but now they're looking good. I've just seen Luca Paolini in the lime green jersey popping in and out of our picture. David Kopp is the first time in that light blue jersey to the right. Watch him, he packs a very good sprint finish, and he got it into action yesterday. These boys now, a lot of pushing and shoving further down. Desperation moments here now, because a lot of riders have been caught out of position.
The pushing and shoving is to get onto the wheel of Tom Boonen. They're all up there trying to fight to get onto Boonen's wheel. They feel he's got the confidence here this afternoon. He wants to win in the yellow jersey. 85 on the front, Salvatore Camesso, a 2-time Italian national champion, not thinking about victory himself, but thinking about Daniele Benati. There is the green jersey, Robin McEwen, right down at the bottom of the picture in around about 20th place, but he's got alongside him here at Stegemans. Wait for it, wait long and hard on this course, because this is a very long finishing straight. It's around about 2 kilometers. They're looking in front of them. They will see the banner over the road, which is 1 kilometer to go. But Phil, this kilometer is going to be interminable.
Well, I'll tell you what, McEwen is deep in the depths of this peloton. He's going to have to move up pretty quickly now at 800 meters to go, because Quick-Step have got Bonin right up there now. Frere is on his wheel, Hushoff is on his wheel, but McEwen is a little bit washed away at the moment. Now the launch for the line being done by Tom Bonin's Quick-Step team. On the far right, watch out for the all-green arrival of the jersey of McEwen. An awful lot of work to do yet. Looking over his shoulders, and they've made Lampre taking the running for Daniel Benati and Balan, but still no sign of McEwen. Hushoff has got the wheel of Bonin. As they come up, Zabel is in there trying to win on his birthday. He's got Bonin's wheel. Bonin leaving this at 500 meters, 300 meters to go. And now the lead out to try and take Benati. Here comes the run for the line though, and he's bringing McEwen for him. Gerd Stegmans made the mistake yesterday. He's just launched McEwen at the line. McEwen is going to win this again, and Bonin has made another mess of it. Bobby McEwen has done it again. I don't believe it. That man is something else.
Well, he was so far down with about 500 metres to go, I thought he'd made a mess of it. But alongside him, he had Gert Steegmans. He waited. He knew this was a long sprint. He knew you had to wait until the last minute. When he saw the gap, he said, Steegmans, go, 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 go. And that's when Steegmans went. He was straight on his wheel. He came up past everybody. Boonen again making a technical mistake in the middle there, getting boxed out by Jimmy Casper. Look at his face there. Robbie McEwen, this is the win. He really is having a ball.
He has found the magic legs this year. He's riding his best tour. 3 wins in the opening 7 days of the Tour de France. Well, he was telling Steegmans he got it all wrong yesterday, but look at Steegmans saluting, because I just got it right. My man has just won again. That is incredible.
Well, it's incredible. At this point, Steegmans knew he'd done it right this afternoon. Steegmans himself this year already won a bunch sprint in an earlier race called the Electra Tour, and he reckoned then, I'm going to be the man for Robbie McEwen, and Robbie is really having a ball with this one. That was a great win, and Bernardi was up there in second.
Well, that was a fabulous sprint. Tom Boonen seems to have lost those twitch fibres since he came to the Tour de France, because he'd won 17 races until now, and he was much faster than Robbie. Robbie's had a little bit of a time out with sickness, so he took wisely a rest. He's come back with terrific enthusiasm. 3 wins now, which equals the 3 wins he took earlier in the Tour of Italy this year. Amazing. So McEwen gets the win. I think it was Bernard who got second in the incitement. Zabel was in the mix. So too was Bernard Eisel. And so too was Tom Boonen, and of course Frere off to the left, and Hushoft. All the sprinters galore right there. We'll get them in the right order for you after the break, of course, as always. We'll try and grab some interviews for you, and we'll have all of the results and the awards of the jerseys. The Tour de France, isn't it a great race? We'll see you after the break. Welcome back. We are in Vitré in Brittany in France, and that man from Australia down under has just done it again. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning back home in Australia for Robbie McEwen, and they will be watching him win his 3rd stage of the Tour de France this week. Let's have a look. I think we can show you the action of the sprint again. Robbie McEwen made this one look so easy, Paul.
But this is how he won it. You see how Gert Steegmans is just in front of him there. Steegmans sprints from 400 to 200 metres to go, and Robbie cleverly goes down the inside, forcing anybody else to have to go around the outside. Look how Bernardi then has to go round to the right-hand side of Steegmans, but Robbie's already got 2 or 3 metres advantage. Steegmans knows it. Boonen again gets it wrong this afternoon in 3rd, and Bernard Eisel, riding very cleverly for FDJ, gets himself across the line in 4th. But for McEwen, unbeatable.
Big thanks to Gert Steegmans for that brilliant lead out. Robbie McEwen has consolidated his lead now from 1 point in the overall lead in the green jersey. He's added 35 more to that in this brilliant sprint win. All power to the elbow here. Bernardi was the man on the right that the Lampre team had tried to bring home. He didn't let the side down, of course. He finished in 2nd place in the end, but this guy, you just can't catch him. He is just like a rabbit once he leaves the pen, and you won't catch up with him. He is so quick. Poor old Eric Zabel at 36, pumping away in the middle in the blue. We were hoping he was going to get a win on his 36th birthday. Not to be. Celebrations for De Vitamin Lotto. Let's have a look at the results brought to us by Honda. And these are the confirmation. All the same time, of course. McEwen, Bernardi, Tom Boonen getting 3rd, banging the handlebars in disgust. Bernard Eisel, the sprinter en Française des Jeux, getting the 4th. Thor Hushoff getting points, though, in the green jersey competition, finishing in 5th today. Oscar Freire, the winner yesterday, back into 6th place today. Eric Zabel, 36, too old. He only gets 7th now. Luca Paolini, supposed to win for Leaky Gas. He got 8th. Gert Steegmans got 9th while he was helping Robbie win. While further down, Anaki Isasi, he's finished in 10th after a high finish yesterday. David Kopp, developing nicely, getting a taste for the big sprints in 11th. Jimmy Casper came back from a puncture but still got 12th. Stephen de Jong, a lead-out man in Quickstep, got 13th. And Marco Bello there completing the top 15 for the Milran team. Bello leads out, by the way, Eric Zabel. Isaac Galvez did better than finish last like he did yesterday. He got 16th this time around. Top 20 there, completed by Credi Agrocole's Jimmy Ongoulvent. Well, I hope you agree, these sprints are sensational. Listen, by next week we're going to talk about the real men who are going to win the Tour de France, but right now this is the Tour de France, and Robbie is fantastic.
Well, you know, 500 metres to go. I was looking through the pack and I saw a green jersey in around about 25th position. I thought, uh-oh, he's blown it this afternoon, but that was underestimating his teammate, Gert Stegeman, who charged him right up through the middle of the field, put him into the right position at 150 metres to go. Nobody stopped Robbie then.
You see, yesterday it was Gert Stegeman's fault. He took him to the front a little bit too early in that wind, but Robbie didn't fall out with him. He said, we'll do better tomorrow. This time he got it absolutely right, didn't he? Let's have a look at the overall standings. If we look at the Michelob Ultra top overall leaders of the Tour de France tonight, Bonen increased his lead slightly because he got a bonus. Robin McEwen jumps over Michael Rogers into second place. Rogers, long-term prospect, good time trialist, might do well tomorrow. Oscar Freire in fourth place. George Hincapie wonderfully poised in fifth, just 25 seconds behind Boonen. Could be racing for the yellow jersey in the time trial tomorrow, George Hincapie, and that would be a great thing. He's had it once already in the opening week. Well, Paul, read it again.
Well, just look at this. Bernati had a good lead out from his man, but look at the power of the man on the front in the red jersey of Davide Monlotto. Looks down to see where Robin McEwen is. He feels that Robin McEwen is coming by. Then he says, right, I'll sit up now. Job done. Robbie's got nowhere for anybody to pass him except over on the left-hand side. He hugs the barriers, but at this point he knows he's got it. The man in the yellow jersey, Tom Boonen, once again has not quite got it right. He actually bumped shoulders a little bit with Jimmy Casper. I don't think he was too happy about that because he might have felt that he had the power here this afternoon. 3 wins for Robbie McEwen, 11 in his career.
3 wins.
That's impressive.
Absolutely fantastic. All right, well, that's the finish of the stage, but it's not the finish of the show. We'll wrap it up with all the prize presentation and all of the interviews, of course, when we come back. Do enjoy the Tour de France with us. Stay, and when we come back, we'll be with Al Troutwig and Bob Roll.
Tomorrow, it's time to fly solo. 32 miles full throttle, man versus clock. The men who would be king are about to emerge. The individual time trial, tomorrow live at 8:30 a.m. on OLN. Brought to you by Capital One.
OLNTV.com is on tour and right in the middle of the Tour de France. Get instant and exclusive access to clips, photos, bios, and race routes, along with stage summaries and forecasts from our team of experts. OLNTV.com, your link to the Tour de France.
We're back live in Vitré, France. Conclusion of Stage 6 today. Al Troutwig and Bob Roll. Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen had the call. It was exciting again, but I think we've pretty much established, Bob, that Robin McEwen's the man right now when it comes to this.
He is the man of these sprints, led out perfectly by Gert Stegeman, pulling off with about 200 meters to go. And Robbie hits the front, and that's all he needs in this tour to get the wins. Tom Boonen boxed in a little bit by Jimmy Casper. He had a very good lead out himself, but Robbie McEwen absolutely too tough so far in this year's tour. 3 stage wins. And my pick on the day, so I'm really happy about that.
And I like Robbie McEwen's teammate on the lead out. He led up at the end. That allowed Tom Boonen to come across and get third. But you see Boonen go like this. He was mad at that bump, no question about it.
Yeah, no question about it. He was impeded a little bit in the sprint. He had the lead out from Steven de Jong, his teammate. Jimmy Casper came from behind, tried to get on the wheel, impeded Boonen from coming out. Then Casper started to fade. He went back to 12th, but it was just that much hesitation that Boonen could not re-accelerate or catch Robbie McEwen. So a very good stage win for the Australian. More bad luck for Tom Boonen. The yellow jersey is so hard to keep. I think they're giving away way too much energy to keep Tom Boonen up there for the sprints.
We've got to dot our I's and cross our T's on this stage, but we want to look forward to tomorrow while we have a chance. It's Stage 7. It's the individual time trial. It's going to start and finish in Rennes. It's about 32 miles. It's a good test. A lot of people feel that David Zabriskie is the man when it comes to aerodynamicism on the tour right now. Our coverage begins at 8:30 a.m. live, 5:30 on the West Coast live, enhanced coverage in prime time, 8 p.m. Eastern time and 9 Pacific. Now, a short while ago, Frankie Andreu had a chance to talk to Floyd Landis about the time trial tomorrow.
You've worked on your time trialing. Are you confident you'll be able to do a good ride?
Yeah, if I'm good, the position won't be a problem. If my legs are good, I think I can win. Otherwise, we'll see. But I feel good, so hopefully tomorrow it's the same.
Many people have talked about you being the favorite. Who do you think could be your other competition?
We'll find out tomorrow, I think.
All right, thanks.
See you guys.
Good luck, Floyd. Good luck.
All right, that is a very confident Floyd Landis. It's not often you can hear him say, I think I can win.
No, it's true, and he loves the time trials. He's worked so hard on his position, his fitness, his cadence. He's got one of the best coaches in the business, too, our own Robbie Ventura.
And Robbie explained in our coverage tonight how Floyd's going to have a very different aerodynamic look. He's going to look a little bit like a downhill ski racer tomorrow. We're going to go to the podium now. Robbie McEwen yet again getting presented with the green jersey and the stage win today. He has really been awesome, and I'll tell you what, his team has lost some players. They've had crashes. Freddie Rodriguez is out, but they've stepped up in support of him.
They've lost some men. Those have been coming to the fore from the riders that started the tour. You don't get substitutions, so other riders that may not have demonstrated the competence before are asked to step up, and Geert Stigmans, Robbie McEwen's teammate, has most certainly done that, doing a great lead out today.
And he's a great interview, and probably the best statement that was made in this tour that's come true was Robbie McEwen's pledge to the Aussie fans to stay up late night, like 3 a.m. in Australia, to see the finishes of these stages, and he has come through for them. You look through the final stage there, you see Tom Boonen gets a point for some lucky selector. Eric Zabel, a player again on his 36th birthday, just not able to seal the deal. Honda taking a look at the final stage 6 results. Some of the things we saw today, let's look and relive it.
Lamprey doing the big lead out. Benate goes to the middle, but Stigmans has already made his jump with McEwen or his teammate on the wheel. De Jong tries to get on McEwen's wheel. Boonen struggling a little bit. Jimmy Casper comes over. Boonen trying to re-accelerate, but look at the clear daylight between Stigmans and McEwen. 150 meters to go. Robbie McEwen, easy win. Benatti second. Boonen getting back into third, and Eisel fourth for the FDJ squad. He is the fastest man. The green bullet, Robbie McEwen.
Times like these when a guy in the green jersey wants to hand a watch to a teammate, but you know there'll be some payback along the way.
Oh, absolutely. Every time they win a stage, the team gets a little bit more money and some bonuses from the sponsor. Great job by the Vita Monlotto squad. They've been beleaguered a little bit, losing Freddie Rodriguez early in the tour, and Robbie McEwen has made the most of the leadouts from this man, Geert Stigmans, and the other riders on the team doing the big protection job in the finale of each one of these flat stages designed for the sprinters to shine.
And that roundabout we thought that was going to be so tricky, they had a last trick up their sleeve. They just changed it.
They took the whole thing out. When the peloton got to that 3Ks ago, they didn't even know anything about it. It wasn't even there.
It's sort of a good news, bad news thing for Tom Boonen. The good news is, Tom, you know, the yellow jersey, okay, but the bad news is they just can't, as a team, figure out a way to pull this together. A reminder coming up in just a few moments on OLN, the Volvo Ocean Race. That as we continue here live from Vitré in France. So now finally, after all these flat stages, finally tomorrow we can adjust the general classification, the race for the yellow jersey.
Yes, absolutely. Tomorrow is the first day in the road to Paris. If you're a GC man, you've got to do a good time trial. 52 kilometers, over 30 miles of time trialing. That's you with your machine against the clock. It's the race of truth, and it's our first big GC battle. It's our rendezvous for the men that want to win this bike race. They've been falling like flies. We still have 15 guys that are capable of winning the tour, but that number will be down to about 5 or 6 guys tomorrow.
Multiple stages now for Tom